fancy intro music. Yeah! Woohoo!
Hey Star Trek League of Man fans, today I want to do something a little unusual for the channel and talk about the new PvP meta as it's actually coming out. And the reason I'm doing it now is because, well, people in the Discord have been asking about it. Truthfully, usually I wait until I actually unlock officers to discuss a new meta or new officers coming out, but because people want to know whether they should go after this in their SLB, free-to-play players who have saved up, or if you're just simply a spender, we're going to talk about Mirror Universe Picard and technically Mirror Universe Data all in one, because they do kind of work in tandem together. And they are indeed the new meta, as you'll see in today's video. Now, the initial design behind these is pretty simple. The design was to be better and beat the Carol Freeman crew. Those who don't know what the, I guess at this point, old meta was, is this one, right? You've probably seen this out in the galaxy at some point or another. Carol Freeman, Lorca, Honor Guard Worf. Now, I do want to say that these new officers coming out have not negated these officers, and that these are still going to be the most common and one of the most effective groups that you have, but there is now a crew designed specifically to beat them, and we can kind of explain the basics as to how. But first, let's go back to the officers, and then we'll talk about logs and some of the pitfalls of these officers, because I do want y'all to know, as at the time of making this video, what's going to be some of the issues that you might run into if you decide to go after them. So, number one, let's talk about Mirror Universe Picard. Captain's ability. Start a round against players, increases isolated cascade by 50% for 2 rounds. Obviously, synergy is going to make that even better. And then the officer ability. Again, very important to have assimilate here on round start against players with assimilate. Mirror Picard increases your apex barrier by 10,000 in round or level 1, maxing out at 30,000. And if you remember, the current idea behind apex is 10,000 is twice the survivability, roughly. Again, this is going to be a convoluted stat, and I'm actually very curious if somebody comes across this video 6 to 12 months from now if that still applies. But for now, at the time of this happening, it's a pretty big jump in survivability, hence why it's so good versus Carol Freeman and Lorca and Honor Guard Worf, because that set is literally a maximum damage set. Well, this is literally a maximum damage reduction set, so it's a natural counter to that. This wins by actually extending fights, making them go longer, thus allowing you, who's producing less damage, to win by negating the amount of damage that they are pushing out. But let's talk about the overall stats and abilities of this one. There are the totals there on the right side, but I've included, usually I don't do this, but these officers are different. And we tried to really talk about this in my preview videos, in our live streams, and so many people still don't know. These officers are very, very different than previous officers. You only have a couple of others who are similar in that they take a unique currency. And the unique currency these take is liquid Trellium D, which you get as part of the Mirror Universe run. But the amount that you get is actually pretty limited. And you're going to be limited for quite a while. I'll show you how in a second. But before we do that, we actually should talk about his running mate, because the running mate is actually incredibly important here in Mirror Universe Data. Now, the first thing you're going to ask is, hey, Rev, can't I use Dazok to give me assimilate for Picard's abilities? You are right, because most of you are not going to end up with Mirror Universe Data, right? He is pay only this month. So you could use Dazok, but here's the trouble with Dazok. I'm going to back out and show you real quick. For this new meta, I think it's good for everybody to understand why and how things work. Dazok, you can acquire 2 different ways: through the Borg events that happen every couple of months, the in-between event, the Mega Cube events, and by doing expansion cubes with your Vidar Talios. But he has the ability to create assimilate as a below deck officer, which is great. But key here is the wording. Right here, you have to get your opponent's hull health below 95%. That's not 95% in general. So like if I came to you into a fight with my hull health at 95%, it's not that. It's 95% at the start of combat. So even if that hostile that you're fighting, that player, is already half damaged, he still has to lose 5% hull before this can take effect, meaning round 2 minimum, whereas data starts before the round. That's a critical difference and allows you to get a lot of survivability out of Picard. Because think about it, if that one round doesn't happen, that Carol Freeman, Honor Guard Worf, Lorca combo is going to punch really hard in the beginning. So let's go back to data real quick and talk about his value and what he levels up at, because you are going to want to level him up. The big ability is the assimilate ability here, which is on the start round at rank 1, 45% chance to cause assimilate for 2 rounds, 100% at rank 5. Captain's ability not as valuable, but it is important to note this because it's a safe assumption to probably think that you're probably going to have a battleship version and an explorer version, since he's an interceptor version. So likely more PvP officers on the horizon. But for now, the main thing for here for Picard is the ability to create assimilate. But just as you ran into with Picard, you run into the same thing with Mr. Mirror Universe Data, where he cost liquid Trellium D to upgrade, as well as your normal officer XP, badges, etc., etc. Now, here's where this becomes an issue for many players, and this is something that you have to discuss amongst your group, your alliance, or even yourself. Nothing wrong with talking to yourself a little bit. Will you be able to afford upgrading these officers without buying more packs? Now, again, if you choose to do that and that's your prerogative, absolutely fine. I don't tell people how to spend their money. It's your money. But like right now, if you wanted to max out Mirror Universe Data and you're a lower, let's say mid 40s player, you're going to spend thousands of dollars because you can't get the liquid Trellium D. So you're going to need to buy it out of the only available packs, and there's not a lot. And maybe they roll out a liquid, Trellium D pack that is more cost effective. But for now, it's more just, let me show you the base numbers. Now, if you are a lower level player, I'm gonna say lower level is in the 30s and 40s. 40s being the main focus. If you're a player in the 40s, your ability to source liquid Trellium D is extremely limited. Even if you're doing both the Trellium A and Trellium D refineries, you're getting a few hundred every time. Whereas if you look at both of these officers, you need a lot of liquid Trellium D, about 80,000 for Mr. Data here. And as far as Mr. Picard goes, a lot more than that, almost double. So you need that liquid Trellium D to get them effective. Now, as far as Mr. Picard here goes, he's kind of fine at tier 1, tier 2, but you really want Data because his ability is based on proccing assimilate to be as high ranking as possible. So getting into tier 3, not that bad, but you see big jumps at tier 4 and tier 5 cost-wise, so just something to bear in mind. Still want to have probably Dazok below Dex, but that's a crew that is critically important and critically difficult to upgrade. But let me show you this in action. How about that? We're going to start with a big example. We actually had ECO to do this on the stream the other night. This is a Katinga with a pretty green skin taking down an Enterprise D. So that is a 4-star uncommon taking down a 5-star epic, and these are both Sigma players. Now, obviously, you see ECO is higher level, but they're both players in the 60s, both with good research. Obviously, you don't have as much on the right side, but the point being, you're seeing a meta crew, one of those over there, that's a meta crew, get beat by the new crew. There's also others examples. Have this one I wanted to include, specifically because it takes on the new one, and before anybody goes, oh, Rev, bad crew, 6 of 11 is there, because look, no effect. As in, we're just testing Mirror Universe Picard, Mirror Universe Data. Nobody else. No Honor Guard Worf, no Lorca, just the 2 new officers. And there's your result, right? The whole point is more survivability and allows you to create more damage. Y'all know how it used to work, 1-round fights with that crew, and it was done. No longer the case with this crew, where you're getting, rounds going anywhere 5 to 10 rounds, which is significantly better for a PvP match. Now, for those curious what the optimal loadout currently is, obviously that's difficult to say with so many primes, researchers, etc. in the game. But the current meta, if you will, is going to be Mirror Universe Picard, Mirror Universe Data, and then Honor Guard Worf right here, or Carol Freeman. Now, the cool thing is, you can run multiple PvP crews now if you manage or decide to go after these, like Mirror Universe Picard, Mirror Universe Data, Honor Guard Worf, and then you can run something over there, like kind of what we were seeing before, with that previous screenshot where you may run Carol Freeman, or you run one of these crews, or you run a mixture of crews, and you can still find success and have value with these if you decide to go after them. It does come down to whether PvP is valuable to you in the game. And for a lot of people, it doesn't hold a ton of value, especially with this set having a very high cost buy-in. It's not something that I'm going to go over here and just recommend the players go after. The good part of this is it's easier to fight this crew with older PvP sets because it's based on damage reduction and extending fights. So now we're getting back into it actually mattering how much piercing you're having and how much mitigation you're having. I do think it's a step in a better direction, with the negative being, well, there's a massive wall here called packs that you got to get through. But if you do manage to unlock Mirror Universe Picard, which a lot of players in the 20s, 30s, etc. can do, and maybe at some point you find a way to get data, depending on how they source it. Again, I'm putting out this video very early compared to what I normally do, so that y'all can have a plan, if you will, of whether you want to go after them in the leaderboards upcoming this month. Now you see them in effect. The plan from game design was to create something that was better than the current PvP crew while also extending fights to allow more options. And this technically does do that. And I'm sure the new PvP officers that come following this month that match the set will also do the same thing. Whether it's good for you is something that you have to decide for you and your play style. And if you choose to free-to-play grind them, then you might just be like me, waiting, several months for them to get added to things like incursions in the Section 31 faction store. Which I will say is a good thing that we have precedent of PvP officers getting put somewhere, so at least we can think of some level of sourcing in the future for them without it being just a, hey, I hope they do this. Well, really do hope this video answered any questions you might have, but if it didn't, and sometimes it doesn't, that's okay. You can hit me up on Discord or Facebook. Just make sure you like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and if you need any help with PvP, PvE, or anything in the game, I'm more than happy to answer. I wanted to make this video to warn you, whether you want to go after or not, how much the initial buy-in cost, as in a literal buy-in, will be, or how just effective you can be. Because truly, if a free-to-play player unlocks the new Picard and just has to rely on Dazok, can still create a formidable PvP crew with them, because the whole design around Apex is to extend fights, increase survivability, thus allowing more options. Let me know what you think and what you need help with in the comment section down below. Live long and plunder, stay safe with our space cowboys. Deuces, that's me. Catch you on the next Star Trek League Man video and live streams, which are tomorrow. Yeah, basically every day.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.